Welcome to this explainer. Look, I've spent decades on the bench, soldering, biasing tubes, and digging through the guts of analog amps in vintage studio consoles. Today, we're doing a forensic teardown. We are going to figure out exactly why your extremely expensive modern digital modeler kind of sounds like a compressed, fizzy toy when you put it up against a real breathing analog rig. So grab your schematics because we're leaving the corporate marketing fluff at the door today.
Think back to 1988, Eric Johnson's legendary Austin City Limits performance. The guy built this massive multi-amp split rig. We're talking Marshall Plexis, Dumble Overdrive Specials, vintage Fender Twins, the whole shebang. Because he was pushing actual physical voltage through real iron transformers, that rig kept this explosive, highly musical analog headroom. You can see it mapped out here on the left. But today? Well, today players grab a digital block matrix, that lethal-looking red setup on the right. They just blindly stack virtual gain stages until the internal processors overload, and then they stand around wondering where their tone went.
It's so common now. You plug into these advanced pieces of hardware, like a quad Cortex or a Tone Master Pro, and you just drag and drop a virtual rig across a screen. I mean, it feels intuitive, right? But by doing that so casually, you unwittingly walk right into what I call the digital gain staging deception. You end up treating this hyper-precise, high-fidelity computer like it's just a forgiving chain of old analog stomp boxes on a pedal board. Let me tell you, the physics going on under the hood are completely different.
Okay, here is the absolute crux of the issue, the 0 dBFS ceiling. In the analog world, hitting a gain block hard is actually a good thing. It gives you that beautiful, musical voltage sag. It compresses, it breathes, it adds all that harmonic richness that guitarists have literally relied on for over 60 years. But in the digital realm, fixed point math hits a hard, completely unforgiving brick wall ceiling called 0 dBFS. Anything that pushes above that line isn't just compressed, it is completely and irreversibly destroyed.
So when you recklessly chain digital blocks together, let's say slamming a virtual screamer into a high-gain amp, without actively attenuating the output of the preamp block, you are absolutely not driving a tube. You can see that lethal red clipping hitting the 0 dBFS ceiling right here. What you're actually doing is brutally chopping off dynamic transients and turning them into harsh, flat-topped square waves. And the worst part? This happens right in the critical 2 kHz to 4 kHz region, which just so happens to be exactly where the human ear is most sensitive to harshness. Now, let's geek out on the actual math behind your cabinet simulation for a second. It all comes down to acoustic convolution physics. The equation is y of t equals x convolved with h of t. Simply put, this is the raw mathematical rendering of a physical acoustic space, based entirely on your input variables. But here is the really cynical truth about modern modeling. That digital clipping we just talked about, it happens internally, way before the signal even hits the impulse response block. So you are mathematically destroying the physics before your fancy virtual cabinet can even do its job.
Think about it this way. If your input sequence, the x variable in that equation, is already a mangled, hard-clipped square wave thanks to sloppy internal gain staging, while multiplying it by the impulse response in a fast convolution matrix is just exponentially multiplying garbage. It absolutely does not matter how much you try to tweak the high-end EQ frequencies afterward. You simply cannot unsquare a clipped wave just by passing it through a high-end virtual cabinet. It's already dead. Whether you're running a pristine Altiverb impulse recorded in a world-class concert hall, or just using the stock onboard cab sim in your floor unit, IR processing matrices rely completely on uncorrupted transient data to function correctly. Period. Feeding an overloaded, clipped digital signal through an IR matrix is exactly what results in that thin, lifeless, fizzy sound that everybody constantly complains about and nobody can ever seem to EQ out. So let's get the physics straight here once and for all, guys. Analog tape and real vacuum tubes compress dynamically. They saturate beautifully when you push them hard. But analog to digital and digital to analog converters, they physically cannot exceed 0 dBFS. When those digital converters run out of bits, they don't saturate. They simply chop off your waveform. It results in unmusical, totally irreversible square wave destruction. There is zero analog warmth to be found here. It is just broken math. If you actually want that explosive, dynamic touch response, the kind of feel that guys like Eric Johnson get, you need your digital waveforms to look exactly like this. You want natural, uncorrupted, overlapping transient signals that preserve your dynamic headroom. You absolutely, under no circumstances, want them looking like rigid, flat-top square waves hitting a digital brick wall. So,
that obviously begs the question, right? How do we fix this internal gain structure? How do we finally stop treating precision digital matrices like forgiving analog stomp boxes and actually restore that massive analog-style headroom inside a purely digital domain?
Well, we have to rebuild the gain structure forensically step by step. First step, you've got to match your input impedance. Often, just leaving it at the 1 megaohm default preserves your raw pickup signal perfectly, which stops high-end loss before it even begins. Second, and this is huge, you must pad your digital block splits. When you split signals for stereo or dual amps, you have to offset those blocks with specific dB reductions. We're talking anywhere from -6 to -18 dB. And third, you need to align those parallel pads perfectly to prevent phase cancellation. If you don't, phase issues will totally thin out your tone, completely regardless of your gain settings. And that brings us to a really fundamental engineering principle, the unity gain rule. See, to get the absolute maximum dynamic range out of modern A to D converters, which is typically sitting around 114 decibels, you actually want to push your analog input into the converters relatively hot. But, and this is a big but, to prevent internal clipping further down the line, you have to insert a utility gain block early in the digital chain to apply an exact inverse decibel reduction. You've basically got to utilize these utility blocks as virtual isolation transformers.
Take a look at this comparison. On the left, that unpadded matrix in red, it's setting off internal digital clipping alerts all over the place. Listen to me. Do not trust the default block outputs. Just because the software sets a level automatically doesn't mean it's mathematically right for your signal chain. Over on the right, in green, we've deliberately dialed back those internal digital block levels by up to -18 dB before they hit the cabinet or the IR block. Doing this one simple thing restores pristine signal transfer and brings back the dynamic headroom your ears have literally been begging for.
Honestly, as a player in the modern era, you need to watch your hardware's internal input and output settings with the paranoia of a grumpy studio engineer. If an input or a send block indicator flashes red, even for a split millisecond when you chug heavily on a palm mute, you are already ruining the math. Back your levels down. Trust your meters, not the factory presets.
I really want you to burn this quote into your memory. There is no such thing as good digital clipping. When the converters run out of bits, they clip badly, and not in a musical way. That's not just my opinion. As the bench techs and converter designers themselves will tell you, there is simply no physical scenario where clipping an A to D converter or overloading a digital DSP block yields a usable musical guitar tone. It just doesn't happen. Zero. So if you're tired of guessing why your expensive rig still sounds bad, and you want more raw forensic audio engineering data without all the corporate marketing fluff, make sure you subscribe to the Tone Manual. We don't do hype here. We deal in schematics, physics, and reality. I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. The next time you fire up your modeler, I want you to really ask yourself, are you forensically routing your signal with the precision of an actual engineer, or are you just blindly stacking digital blocks on a screen until your tone is choked to death? Think about it. I'll see you next time.